the year of COVID, right? Where 90% of these funds are overseas funds. They come from America, they come from Europe, they come from Japan, China, the Middle East. They come from somewhere other than Israel. So today, and this is good news for Botswana, by the way, today investors are willing to invest on Zoom. Just the way that I'm speaking to you now, this is the way that investor meetings are going to happen in the future, and it's going to democratize and level the playing field so that an entrepreneur in Botswana will have a better chance of raising money in the future. Now, if you want to raise money, you got to show people exits. You got to show them that in these private companies, you can't just invest money, but you can make money. That's critical. Now, Israel has done that consistently over the last decade because the Israeli companies that are being built now are getting bigger and bigger. Here's an example of some of the exits that are the billion-dollar, call them, they were babies at one time. Now they're pretty big, teenagers who are being bought by the world-leading companies in a variety of areas. So it's not just cybersecurity, which everybody knows Israel's very strong, but it's in medical technology and agricultural technology and food technology, and especially artificial intelligence. Now, what's happening is that what's shocking is that this is now becoming a good time to invest, despite the COVID pandemic. Investors are investing record sums of money because they see that the trends that are emerging now are long-term trends. The work from home, the remote education, the e-commerce, telemedicine, all of these trends are going to be bigger and bigger, and that's what investors are jumping on in the venture capital arena. Now, in addition to that, in Israel, we've got some very good news, which is that we all of a sudden are now normalized with the UAE. And this is unlocking a huge amount of energy, global attention. We look at it as though the sand curtain, not the iron curtain, but the sand curtain came down in the middle of the center of the world. And this is going to allow for much more commerce and trade and sharing of innovation and ideas between East and West and North and South. And we at Ourcrowd, we're Israel's most active venture investor. We've been very, very active in leading the way on this new cooperation in the Gulf. We've appointed our own manager there and partner, Dr. Sabah Al-Banali. And I hope that this is a model for our future engagement in Africa, where we want to bring the message of Startup Nation and our investment platform to work with the entrepreneurs in the African continent. So when you look at Ourcrowd, these are a little bit old numbers, but we're about $1.5 billion. We have over 220 portfolio companies and 60,000 accredited investors around the world. And we are a democratic platform, allowing individuals and institutions on the same terms to invest in exciting startup companies. As I mentioned, we are not just a democratic platform, but a very successful one in that we're Israel's most active venture investor. Last year, we made 38 new company investments. This year, we expect to go beyond that. And many of our companies are receiving funding from both these institutions on the top line and from the tens of thousands of individual investors. On our platform, you can choose between making a single company investment for $10,000 or more, or for putting money into a venture capital fund for $50,000 or more. Today on the Ourcrowd platform, we're actually up to 60,000 investors. That numbers of August are old, and we hope to get more before the end of the year. And you have the choice of either selecting your own company or of selecting funds that are based on either sectors such as digital health or sports technology, mobility, or ag tech, or you can take a generalist fund, which is either early stage, it could be later stage, or it could be according to different strategies, such as our portfolio index OC50, which is a hyper-diversified index with 50 companies in it. This is a hard slide to see, but this shows you are at least some of the 220 companies that we've invested in, and they run from healthcare to mobility, from cannabis to drones, from agriculture to enterprise software, from food tech to fintech. So it really is a wide variety of technology where we're choosing companies or providing you with, on the right-hand column, the ability to invest in funds. Our companies are among some of the leading companies in the world who are making news and raising big dollars, as you can see from these headlines. And in particular, we're very active in terms of backing companies who are working on the front lines of the COVID crisis. We have backed a company called Migvax, who are developing a new oral vaccine, which will be very important for Africa, because many of these vaccines that they're talking about having to refrigerate at either below zero or in some cases -70, that's going to be tough for bringing it into the more remote places in Africa. We're working on an oral vaccine, which doesn't need refrigeration, which doesn't require a shot. It's simply a pill or a little cup of liquid, and you'll be vaccinated. And we're hoping that'll be ready sometime late next year. In general, we are doing very well. We have a lot of companies that are now worth a lot of money on the Ourcrowd platform. We're over 60 companies now worth $100 million or more. And many of our companies are being either IPO'd in New York or being bought by leading companies. So, for example, the two biggest IPOs of 2019 and 2020 in terms of performance were Beyond Meat last year, the leading company in plant-based meat alternatives. That we were an investor again as a private investor before the public offering. Company has just rocketed on the stock exchange. And this year, our company Lemonade, which is a pioneer in the next generation of insurance companies, had a spectacular opening on NASDAQ, and we're very excited about that company. You can see a variety of other companies we've backed that have been bought by some of the leading corporations in the world. Here's another slide about the Lemonade IPO. So again, just to summarize, you'll see that, and this is fairly remarkable, that of the Fast Company list of the 50 most innovative companies in the world between 2015 and 2020, 20 of our portfolio companies have been on that list. So I think we're doing something right in terms of backing companies that really are out there trying to change the world and doing so. Let's talk about some of the areas where we're investing in. So first of all, in the financial technology area, we ourselves are a fintech. Turns out that Ourcrowd has been named over the last 5 years by KPMG as one of the top 50 fintechs in the world. We invested in Lemonade, that spectacular insurance company, which people love in the US, now going all over the globe. BioCatch is a spectacular company that allows a bank to know who you are by how you hold your phone or how you touch it. Literally, it is behavioral biometrics to fight fraud. Or a company like DailyPay, which is providing access every day to the wages of low-paid workers. So you don't have to wait for a month or 2 weeks even to get your paycheck. That a person who's working for a big corporation can now get access to their pay every single day. In cybersecurity, we have companies like Kenna who prevent break-ins, but more in particular, they're giving you a threat detection console. CyberX, which is essentially giving you capability to see what's going on in terms of attacks on the IoT or the Internet of Things network. This company was just bought by Microsoft. Or ThetaRay, which is using artificial intelligence to help banks stop fraud and now moving into correspondent banking transactions. In the mobility area, that is not a futuristic, movie from the, year 2050. This is today, Skytran, which is urban transportation above ground at 200 kilometers an hour, and it costs 1/10 the price of light rail. Innoviz, using advanced laser radar for the next generation of autonomous driving, soon to be announced with BMW, and Kartika, which is providing a critical AI-driven technology for helping cars avoid collisions. In healthcare, companies like Alpha Tau, who are shooting into a solid tumor a new radioactive dart that has literally proven itself 100% effective in shrinking tumors in their clinical trials with humans. And actually 80% of the humans had total destruction of the tumor, which is unprecedented. Zebra Medical, using artificial intelligence to understand radiological images, whether X-ray, MRI, CT, for everything from brain bleeds to osteoporosis to mammography. In SciTech, who is using MRI to guide high-powered ultrasound, focused ultrasound, which is being used to treat Parkinson's tremor. Literally, somebody who has uncontrollable shakes goes into this system, and in less than 1 second, they stop shaking. It's true. Go look it up on Google. In the ag tech area, we have companies like Tyrannus, who are using airborne imaging pods to literally spot bugs on the other side of leaves. It's incredible what they can see. They can actually see the sex of the bug, if you'd like to know. Companies like Tevel, who are using drones to harvest fruit. Today, it's very hard to get enough workers to pick fruit, believe it or not, because of COVID. This is doing it automatically. Or advanced soil sensors from CropX, who you literally, twist it into the ground, hook it up to the cloud, and then it tells you how much water to irrigate or how is your soil doing in terms of fertilizer. In the energy area, companies like Empress that grew up in terms of protecting Israel from missiles. They're the guys who actually make the software for the Iron Dome anti-missile system, which protects Israel's skies when we sleep. But now they are actually driving software in the next generation of utility, oil and gas, and power networks. Locust View, who is building the next generation of essentially critical data for gas infrastructure, or Juganu, who are using embedded LED lights for smart lighting. And now this lighting can actually be used in schools and hospitals to not only give you light, but to kill the COVID virus. That's a new product called J-Protect. Look it up. And in the artificial intelligence area, companies like Halo, whose chip is 20 times faster or 50 times more energy efficient for artificial intelligence processing at the edge. Companies like C-True, who are actually working in Africa now, providing their analysis software for baggage screening in airports to cut down lines. The lines aren't very big now, but this technology will be there when we go back to flying. And finally, Medaware, which is using AI to actually make sure that the medicines that we are prescribed are good for us and not a mistake. Turns out that at Harvard, even 5% of the medicines that were prescribed had issues with those prescriptions. In terms of recent deals that we've done, Sight Diagnostics is a new kind of blood test, which gives you CBC, which is the gold standard of complete blood count, in 10 minutes from a desktop machine, taking 2 drops of blood. This is not fiction. This is not a fraud. It's been released by the FDA. Ripple, which is the leading company providing next generation plant-based milk, long life, extremely tasty, high protein, low sugar, and it's a hit in the US, soon to come worldwide. And companies like Migvax, who are building that oral vaccine for the COVID virus. So our companies are making a lot of news. Some of them that you saw, some other ones. We have, as I mentioned before, over 220 different companies in our portfolio. But our companies are really doing things to help the world. And finally, I want to focus a little bit on things that might be more relevant for Botswana, especially ag tech. And I'm going to start with a company that is addressing a big problem. Around the world, we noticed this horrible tragedy that happened in Botswana with the hundreds of elephants who died. And it turns out that their deaths were caused by something called cyanobacteria, which is essentially a product of what are called toxic algal blooms, where a green scum appears on water holes or even in big lakes. And it turns out that this algae is a real problem, not just for elephants, but for people, because people depend on this water. So our company, Blue Green Technology, has a solution. And I'm going to try to show you the video from this company so that you can see it with me. Hold on. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to start it in a second.
Water, ever so scarce, is facing a global epidemic. Toxic algal blooms are poisoning our waters. Let's start with a spoiler. This story has a happy ending. But back to the problem. What are toxic algal blooms? They are aggressively toxic bacteria that poison our waters and have been recognized internationally as a global health threat. They have been populating our waters for ages, but only now, due to climate change and pollution, they multiply exponentially from season to season, endangering both humans, plants, and animals. You will find them in every sea, lake, or pond, where they deteriorate the environment into a dead aquatic zone. In other words, they make our water undrinkable. But there is hope. Blue Green Water Technologies invented the Lake Guard, an effective technology that selectively targets and eliminates the toxic bacteria, while leaving no trace in the water. The Lake Guard treatment rehabilitates contaminated lakes within days. Yes, a few days later, and billions of gallons of drinking water in South Africa are safe again.
In Blue Green Water Technologies, we pride ourselves of taking care of the world's most precious resource, water. We are honored and proud to introduce our solution to South Africa, which knows better than anyone in the world how critical every drop of water is.
So I'm going to stop that share. Oops, 1 second.
The harmful algal blooms in western Lake Erie have been a problem for years. Climate change is likely to bring increased...
Okay, so I'm going to go back and we're going to share my slides again. You're seeing the new slide, I would assume. This company, which was the video clearly able to be seen, everybody?
Yes, it was very clear.
Okay, good. So the company is called Blue Green Technologies. And as you know, this is a huge problem, this problem of cyanobacteria, not just, again, for elephants in Botswana, but for lakes around the world. Turns out they were just called in to Florida, where they had a huge problem. One of their big lakes was overflowing because of all the hurricanes that they've experienced lately. And they were going to have to release water, which included this bacteria, into other freshwater lakes. And they called this little Israeli company, which we're investors in, and said, we need help. And literally within days, they showed up and the water's clean, they can release it safely. We think that this is a huge potential for cooperation with Botswana. There is no reason for any more elephants to die. There are no more reasons for people to die and have poisoned water. The technology is here. We simply need to understand how to get it into the right people's hands. Now, what we offer is the way to invest in it. Literally, investors can go to our website and can become partners with us in this technology and in other companies that you see highlighted here today. Now, in the food area, we have a wonderful company called Tovala, which is a smart oven. You might say, wait a minute, a smart oven? Turns out that they ship food to you directly. It's raw, fresh food, and you literally show the oven, which has a barcode scanner, the barcode, and it cooks it automatically, gourmet food at your home. The company, The Books, is a next generation e-commerce platform for flowers, right now working from Latin America to the US, someday maybe from Africa to Europe, but they're allowing direct commerce between flower growers in the poor regions of South America to sell quicker, better, and at higher prices to the consumers up in America. We mentioned before our company Tevel, which literally is using drones to pick fruit. And this is a huge issue because so much food is wasted because it can't be picked from the trees. Companies like Phantom Auto, which is using remote control technology to control delivery bots or other kinds of vehicles from afar. Companies like Centaur, who are using technology to better store agricultural grains. Today, when you put grains in a storage after the harvest, you have to spray them so that bugs won't eat them. The problem is you overspray, and that spray is expensive and harmful. And what they're using now are sensors to measure the amount of accurate spray that you need so that you can both save money and make the grains more healthy. Companies like BT9, you see those mangoes, in the middle of it, there's a little sensor which measures the temperature and the humidity and allows you to make sure that what you're shipping to market is shipped at the right temperature and gets there quicker. Companies like Trellis, using artificial intelligence to optimize the supply chain for big food growers. We mentioned Beyond Meat, the spectacular IPO that looks like a delicious burger. It is, except it's plant coming from the pea, not from the beef. Companies like Blue Nalu, who are figuring out ways to grow the next generation of fish from cell lines. We mentioned Ripple, the alternative to milk, also from the pea protein. Duma Tok, which is finding ways to take traditional sugar and making it twice as sweet without artificial sweeteners, so that we can all eat those delicious cupcakes and have half the sugar and fight diabetes. Companies like Blue Tree, who are making natural fruit juices, but again, through the processing, figuring out ways to cut sugars in half in a traditional, good-tasting fruit juice. Companies like Tyrannus, we mentioned, with the aerial platform CropX, with the ground-based sensors, SCIO, who give you real-time spectroscopy in the field so you can measure a piece of corn and know exactly when you should harvest it, not just based on traditional lore or how it looks or how it tastes, but scientifically when it's ready for harvesting, or how much protein is in soybeans, or how much sugar is in the berries or the strawberries that you're picking. So we have different incubators where we're incubating these ideas. I'd love someday to build an agricultural incubator in Africa together with partners like we have already in Israel and in New Zealand. So I think that's enough for a opening discussion. I would love to hear from you and get your questions and talk about how we can build the next generation of cooperation between Botswana and Israel, and in terms of building the startup economy and the startup ecosystem in Africa. Thank you. Questions? Are there any questions? Yes, I'm here. Are there any questions? I'm going to stop my share.
Sorry about that. Okay, great. Sorry about that. My internet went down for a little bit. I want to welcome everybody who's watching the live stream on Facebook to just post your questions on the comments, and then we can go through them. And then for now, I'll sort of ask you questions that we've got from the Twitter feed and the ones that I personally have. I mean, you've gone through an entire list of different types of companies, and I just want to know, Ourcrowd started in 2013, and I want to know about the beginning of the Israeli startup environment, because I think that's where Botswana is at the moment. How did Israel get to the point where you're producing so much, so many startups with such high potential and in all sorts of industries? Can you tell us about that journey from the zero to now being world-class producer of startup unicorns?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, I think it has to do with an old tradition we have in the Jewish people, which is that we are experts at taking curses and turning them into blessings. So you look at the Bible and you'll see it all the time. You know, just because you are cursed doesn't mean you have to accept that. And for example, in Israel, we don't have water. We're a dry country, except today we have so much water, we're exporting it to our neighbors because we were cursed with lack of water. And we, through almost like an Asian maneuver where you take the energy of your opponent and you use it on your behalf, we developed water solutions. So we invented drip irrigation. So we invented unique storage. We're the world's leading country in desalination. Today, the majority of our drinking water comes from the sea. Every drop gets captured here. And that's sort of turning a curse into a blessing. Another curse we have is we don't have many natural resources. All we have are human resources. So we invested in those human resources. And today, 50% of our young people get a college degree. Our kids get trained in the army, which you'd think is a curse, right? Because it's not safe, okay? It's real, except that our kids learn enormous amounts in the army, not only in terms of education, but in terms of how to be mission driven, how to work as teams. They get technology training in terms of not just weapons, but networks and sensors and software. So we have that ability to essentially turn, things that seem as though they're a bad challenge into a blessing. And in particular, we are dreamers. The Jews have always been dreamers from the very beginning. Father Abraham, father of many nations, that's what his name means. Okay, he was told to go to another land, and he came to the land of Israel. And the next thing he knows, he's dreaming of a God that no one can see. And everyone laughed at him and said, how do you worship a God that you can't see? And today the world has monotheism, right? The great, many of the great religions don't worship gods that you can see. And so that kind of dreaming, that kind of creativity has always been part of our people's history. Okay. And we're essentially an indigenous people who came home, right? We lived in the land thousands of years ago and were exiled by the Romans and wandered all over the earth, being killed and destroyed and enslaved. We were slaves in Egypt, except we got to be free. And so our people's history informs a lot of what we do today. It's not just about dreaming of the future. It's about being caught between the past and its great history and where we're going in the future. I think that people who try to throw away their past, who try to forget their past, are doomed. I don't think that works. I think you have to integrate your traditions and your culture with the new future. And it's that attitude plus a natural, let's say, tendency for risk taking, right? To be part of the Jewish people meant that you had risk. People tried to kill us. We lost almost our entire nation in our genocide during the Holocaust. But what that does is it teaches you that life is precious and that you must move on and create. We're all going to live here for a short period of time. We don't have a long time, each of us individually. So what you do is you look at yourself as part of a chain of history and take risk. Go create that beautiful symphony concert. Go work on that scientific breakthrough. Go risk your money on a startup and invest or build it. Because what's the worst thing that can happen to you? You can fail, except failure is part of the process. There is no progress without failure. And therefore, we have a society which embraces this kind of risk taking and allows us, I think, to build the startup economy that we have today.
Well, that's really great. I think what I get that's coming out quite clearly from you is embrace your culture, embrace your traditions, embrace who you are, and that sort of unleashes your potential going forward. And that's really, really amazing. I think a lot of startups who are listening, that's one thing to look back at and say, Botswana has been built from where it was declared as the poorest country in the world. And we've been able now to be one of the successful economies in Africa. And we need to take that in and be able to say, this is the type of people that we are. And therefore, we should be able to push forward and deliver more than anybody has ever imagined. That's really amazing.
Amen.
Sort of learnings from you. Yeah. Just tell me a little bit about with our crowd. You were inviting people to be able to invest in the field of startups that you talked about. What is the criteria for one to be able to be an investor, and what is the criteria for one to come in as a startup to say, I'm looking for investment via your platform?
So first of all, you go to ourcrowd.com and you sign up, and you can sign up either as a entrepreneur who's seeking investment, and there's a whole process that leads you there, or you can sign up as a potential investor or someone who simply wants to learn about the world of startups. It's free. It's www.ourcrowd.com. And every moment at Ourcrowd, we have about 30 different companies that we're highlighting. In fact, maybe I'll show you a demo of what it looks like on our website, if you don't mind. With, see if I can get this to properly share. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Coming right up. Here we go. Share screen. And here we go. So this is Ourcrowd live at the moment. And you'll see that there are many, many companies that you get a chance to look at on Ourcrowd and decide if you would like to learn about them. Arbe is a mobility company. Switch is for managing, diabetes. Morphosec is about, cybersecurity. You see that blue-green water technology. So if you go back to that company, you click on it, and all of a sudden you're going to be brought to a page, and that page will show you both the video material. It will tell you how much money we're raising at what valuation. It will give you an overview of the company, highlights. You can look at the team and you can click and see who they are and what their background is. You get to get a whole description of why we're investing, as well as seeing their presentation. So it's as though they were in your living room, okay, giving you a presentation. It's here online. It's all available. You get their analysis. It's written by my team because we put money into it, and it gives you footnotes, all the quick facts, all the company discussion of their market. All of this is there, as well as the terms of the round, and it's all there for every one of the companies we do. And every moment we have about 20 of these opportunities that are live. So it's very simple. You just go to ourcrowd.com and you sign up. This is what our homepage looks like in case you want to see it. We hope that you do join in our success, and we want people to be part of this. You also can look at our events calendar, and you can see that we have a lot of online events where, there are different Ourcrowd people providing information. If you look, for example, at our event schedule, you'll see that literally, there are things like the Florida Israel Agricultural Summit. Here you're on the Global Expo Botswana. We promoted it, on our website, doing another one this evening, et cetera. And there are always new events. So we urge you to come and join us at Ourcrowd, either as an investor or an entrepreneur or just a member of our community. You are welcome.
Speaking to the investment criteria, is there a minimum or maximum raise for a startup? So can I go in there and look for $5,000?
No. Our startups typically raise a minimum of $1 million, and they can raise tens of millions of dollars. But you have to be selected by us to get on the site, and we have to lead the investment. We put our own money into every one of these deals. And the minimum amount for an investor is $10,000 in a single company. So it's not for people who have not yet really made some money. And the funds where you can invest in different funds, their minimum is $50,000. Now in America, you have to be what's called an accredited investor, which means that you have to have certain minimum annual income or net asset test. But there are about 20 million households in America who can do that. I don't know what the securities laws are in Botswana. We'll check it out. But once we understand those, we'll make sure that we post them on our site. We're very careful about following the regulatory environment in each and every country.
Yeah. And when you're talking about that as a platform, you then have to bet on the company before it goes onto your platform. So what are sort of the things that you look out for when you're assessing both the company itself and the runners of the company? What are the key things that you want to highlight?
Okay, it's always people, people, people. Okay, it's the 3 laws of venture investing. And the earlier that you're investing, the more important the people are. I mean, it's always important. But when you invest in an idea where there's no product yet, what are you left with? You're left with an idea, but people. And so we look for people who are passionate, who have a good understanding and grasp and knowledge about the problem that they're trying to solve, where people have a track record and experience, either in working for other companies or starting other companies of their own, or in experience in the army or university or wherever they're coming from. And then once we get beyond the people, we're looking at what market you're targeting. Is it a fast growing market? Because we just don't want you to grab a market share of a stable sort of sleepy market. We want to go into the new markets that are going to be rising very fast. We look at technology differentiation. We're looking for, we're in particular very into deep tech, because in Israel, the technology is deep, and we think that allows small countries and small companies to have defensible barriers to entry. When other guys see their stuff. If you have the technology, you can defend yourself. And then, of course, we look for what's called business traction, where the company is succeeding and making progress already, where we can then help them. We like people who listen too.
Yeah, great. So I watched one of your presentations beginning of the year in January, and you were talking about how if any business or any tech startup is not looking at AI or machine learning, they might as well shut down and call it a day or start again. Can you tell us about that and the future of AI and machine learning?
I should be taking that to heart myself. We're launching our own AI initiative here. Look, AI changes everything, right? There's just no question that today data is king, and the ability to work with big data, to collect it through sensors, or open databases, but to analyze it and to understand it and to create artificial intelligence that helps you, with the analysis is the key to almost every business. And people don't really understand how important it is in healthcare, in food, in agriculture, in mobility, in finance. It's literally in every area of human endeavor. Now, there are other technologies that are necessary to enable AI, because AI is very computationally intensive and requires lots of, computer power. So there are all kinds of companies that we're backing who are creating chip architectures that are optimized for AI. And that's really important. But I think AI ultimately is the great leveler and the democratizer of this, because it will prove that small companies or small countries who have brilliance can actually compete with the big companies and the big countries. It's no longer how big your resources is, or how big your army is, or how big your medical team is. It's what you can do with computational skills. And I think that's a huge message of health and hope for Africa, because Africa is entrepreneurial. Your entrepreneurs are incredible. The ones I've met, are just people who are passionate and are going to change the world. And as these skills get distributed, people can learn. Google, I think, is giving an AI or data science certificate online in 6 months without a college degree. You can get this from Google. This is going to make everybody able to compete in this world of AI and data science. And if you're thinking about your future career and where to go, you want to go there. Okay, you want to understand this stuff so that you can bring it back to your country, and make it work in your businesses.
Great. Can we now talk about your career, a serial entrepreneur? How long have you been an entrepreneur? How was your starting up? And what are the lessons that us young entrepreneurs can learn from your journey?
Well, first of all, my late father often said, if you have a choice between luck and brains, take the luck. And he was a very smart man. He was a PhD in physics. He gave me a lucky break. I studied history in college, and I moved to Israel because of the dream of participating in the rebuilding of my people's homeland. And he gave me a shot at working with him in a new startup. He was a startup guy, and he was working on something called fiber optic communications. And I took my history degree and I taught myself optics, and I built a successful company with him, and we sold it to Amoco, the big oil company. So that's how I got started. Then I built a software company, I built a venture capital fund, and I've been building things ever since. Part of it is having the courage to basically say, you know what, I'm going to go out of my comfort zone. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to learn new things. I'm going to reinvent myself. Okay, reinvention, I think, is the most key word for any entrepreneur, because even in a company, you have to reinvent yourself. Today, the notion of pivoting, of changing direction when one direction doesn't work is very, very important. So, I'm today, in my 60s, but I'm still reinventing myself all the time. My body doesn't do exactly what I'd like it to do the way it did when I was young, but my mind, thank God, still works. And my body still works too, but my mind works better. And I feel very blessed that my job is to meet people like yourself, to hear their dreams, okay, and then to be able to enable them to make them come true, to be able to raise money for entrepreneurs and to help them. That's a wonderful job. It'll keep anybody young.
Yeah, coming to that before I go and check what's going on social media. How do you define success?
In life, I mean, I think you have to realize that money is really only one component of potential success. It's absolutely true that money can't buy you love, and money can't, make you happy by itself. And so, I personally believe that success is about having an impact, and an impact can be on your immediate surroundings, on your family, being a good mother and a good father, being a good brother and sister, good child. Okay. I think that impact can be on your community, being a pastor, a rabbi, an imam, someone who leads people spiritually, someone who is a teacher or a policeman, or a farmer and feeds people. All of this are things of impact and have success. And I think that, if you want to dream big, you can dream about having an impact on the world or on your country. Okay. And that's important. I think that ultimately my own sense of meaning and success is tied into a historical context. I look at myself as part of a river of history. I think it's very depressing to look at yourself in isolation. I think by looking at yourself as part of a community, and a community which is larger than one's own family, it's really a community, but a community that has a past and a future. And that's, when I go to bed at night and I want to feel good about my life, I look that way, because I realize that, whatever I get done, it continues on, right? It continues on through your kids, through your good deeds. And that's really where you have to, look at the future.
Focus on. Thank you so much. There's just the last 30 minutes that we'll be looking at questions. I think one of the questions that are being asked, let me just
I've got about 5 more minutes and then I've got to run. I've got a crazy day.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I think the one question that has been asked here is, in your first 5 years, what was your biggest challenge? That's the first one.
Learning technology.
Let me just
with a history background. Look, what's possible today is that we're all children of technology. When I grew up in college, we didn't have computers. Okay, we certainly didn't have cell phones. I think most of us don't remember how recent many of these, we didn't have an internet. Okay, so I've luckily grown up in a very dynamic period of time. But I think my biggest challenge was working in technology businesses and not having an engineering degree. Okay, and so I had to, really stretch my brain. Okay, sometimes when you exercise, which I should do more of, your muscles hurt because you really push yourself, and that's a good feeling. You got to push your brain. Okay, brain exercise is important. And I'll tell you, trying to learn technology with a history degree, not in college, was a lot of hard exercise.
Yeah, so the last question is here. One of the things you said in the presentation that I watched in Jen was you were saying how hard it is to sell anything to a Jew. therefore the market penetration there.
I can't believe you're bringing that up.
And it's also in Botswana, one of the biggest issues that startups have is being able to sell locally to your own people. So I want to know, how do you guys get past that? And
well, okay, so that's a great look. The issue is that you have to take a global view today. Okay, I think the biggest mistake that startups do is they think about their local market only, and they don't see beyond their local horizon. And the reason that we succeed in Israel is because we're looking globally, thinking globally from day one. And, you know, we don't hesitate to jump on a plane back in the days when we used to. Now we jump on Zoom. Okay. And I think it's actually getting easier because of that. But the problem is that Botswana is a small market. Israel is a small market. And if you plan on selling products here, forget about it. Customers are tough. Okay. You know, it's too hard. Okay. And you want to go to America. You want to go to Asia. You want to go to Europe. You want to go to Africa and South America and Australia. You want to approach the world market. You want to have something which works for everybody. Now, that's a little risky, right? It means that you've got to compete with the big boys, run with the big dogs and the big girls, okay? But that's, so be it. You know, in other words, yes, that increases my chances of failure, but if we succeed, we win big. And I think that, you know, the goal is to believe in yourself, to stretch your imagination, to build partnerships with people around the world, right? Today, little startups are like baby multinationals. You know, you find programmers who help you in some other country. You find money from other countries. You know, you find customers and partners, and you work together, you know, expand your horizons. And that's what we've done very, very well here in Israel. And by the way, that's going to only increase now because of the normalization with our Arab neighbors, right? This is really hugely impactful, where all of a sudden, you know, I can fly to Dubai, and from Dubai anywhere. Okay, there are 112 weekly flights starting between Israel and the Emirates, which is just a game changer. And this is about working together, because the planet has a lot of challenges. We got to feed all these people. We got to clean up the environment. We got to produce clean energy. We have to make sure that we deal with the pandemic and future healthcare crises. We have to educate people more effectively. These are huge challenges which everybody around the world has to meet. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is startups. Startups have many, not all the answers, but many answers to these can be done through technology. And the next big startups, God willing, you know, Mirza Hashem, inshallah, will come from places like Botswana and other parts of the world. Today, for example, we've been reading about the Pfizer vaccine, right? This incredible vaccine. Turns out the founders of it are Turkish immigrants to Germany. These were two Turkish scientists who lived in Germany and created this company, BioNTech. Entrepreneurs can come from anywhere. Okay, it's not just about Silicon Valley or about Israel anymore. It's about the rest of the world. And that's why I want to salute you for having this global expo in Botswana, for putting together your community. And I hope that in the near future, I'll be able to visit you in person. I look forward to breaking bread and to eating and drinking and enjoying your wonderful country. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, John. It was such a pleasure to have this discussion with you. I hope to talk to you soon.
Okay, all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, bye. And thank you very much, everybody else who is watching. I hope you enjoyed that session with John. And I guess enjoy the rest of the expo. Thank you.